Hey, welcome to the ProtoPod, the podcast for engineers, innovators, entrepreneurs, and trailblazers shaping the future. Here, we dive into the cutting-edge worlds of prototyping, aerospace, rapid manufacturing, high-velocity mass customization, and beyond. I'm your host, Jordan Rose. Today's guest is Sandheep Surendran, founder of Surya Design LLC, a product development firm known for turning inventive ideas into reality across industries like biotech, automotive, and consumer electronics. With over 20 years of experience spanning toys to cleantech, Sandheep brings a multidisciplinary edge to engineering, combining mechanical, electrical, and software expertise. Sandheep has built a reputation for practical innovation, taking products from one-off prototypes to large-scale manufacturing, all with an eye for catching problems before they arise. We dive into his unique approach to design and the projects that have shaped his career. Welcome on, Sandheep. Hey, Sandheep, welcome into the podcast. Super excited to chat with you today. Read through your bio. You've got 20 years of a wide array of product development experience. Your background kind of, I think, says it all. You're a jack of all trades, and I can't wait to learn more about your business, Surya Designs, and how you're helping your customers. Wanted to start out kind of asking you about your background, your professional background, and how it kind of led you to starting your own business. Because it is, from what I can see here, it is a wide array of experience that you have across multiple industries.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the chance to kind of share my story. And so, to answer your question, yeah, I came to California in the at the peak of the dot-com boom, about 6 months before everything kind of went south, and had taken a job with a company working in originally the toy industry, and we pivoted to the automotive industry. We were making electronic muscles, basically shape memory alloy based actuators. Made some really creepy kind of Chucky doll style dolls, and then realized the toy industry is just very difficult. It's so cost competitive. If you can shave a half a cent off the bill of materials, then you might get a raise for that. Mm-hmm. And so for new technology, we pivoted to automotive industry and had a success there with a product that 25 years later, I believe, is still on the market. It was a pneumatic valve for comfort seating applications.
Interesting. Okay.
And but unfortunately, the company itself has long since gone under. That's another interesting story, which could be a podcast in and of itself. But I enjoyed my time in the toy and auto industry. It was exciting as a young engineer to fly to Lego and develop designs for them, and have these meetings in Denmark to be working on parts that are going to go into a Mercedes S-Class. But ultimately, it kind of felt like I kind of projected towards the end of my career and thinking about what it would feel like, and if I felt I had really done anything notable. And it definitely worked on some cool technologies, but it just felt like it was stuff that was all destined for the landfill and not really helping humanity in any way. So I pivoted and got into clean technology with grand visions of saving the planet. Quickly realized that we're all going to hell in a handbasket, but hopefully I was doing some work to kind of slow that trajectory. And spent 2 years with a consulting firm, and then went out to another startup in concentrated photovoltaics for about 2 years. And then when they had kind of some changes at the company, I went out on my own and have been doing this on my own for the last 16 years now.
Awesome. Very interesting. The thing that jumped out at me is it seems to me like you were kind of moving from industry to industry or job to job, kind of in search of fulfillment. My question would be: is what sort of fulfillment does your position now, being the founder and principal at your product development firm? What is that fulfillment that you get from that?
I get it on multiple levels. There's this kind of curious engineer within me that would be fulfilled working on stuff for Lego and in the automotive industry. There's just like the pure technical challenge. It's very satisfying to solve
Hmm.
problems, to develop systems, to see your product on the shelf. But I kind of in line with what I was saying earlier. There was a greater fulfillment for me to work on things that I feel like are making some positive impact. I mean, at some point, before I started my company, I was doing some soul searching on what I wanted to do next, and I was just like, I'm too old to join Peace Corps. I've got a lot of skills as an engineer, and how can I make the greatest benefit um, with my engineering capabilities? And so that's where clean tech really made the most sense. And unfortunately, in retrospect, it's less fulfilling because I worked on a lot of technologies that had the promise of doing something beneficial, but ultimately, technologies that failed. But I do believe that we help to kind of move industries forward and can contribute in this collective effort to combat climate change. My work in medical devices and biotech, I think, has helped. I've played a very small role in these much larger
Hmm.
efforts, but it feels to be kind of on the positive side of moving things forward.
Yeah, I mean that's a very inspiring tale, and I can definitely relate. I think that you know uh, solving problems for people is absolutely where I feel like I get a lot of my own personal satisfaction, and it is. I think
Hmm.
the healthiest place for people to find satisfaction, the most sustainable in terms of happiness in your career. What problems would you say that you've solved specifically for your customers? Like what uniquely do you do that solves a pain that they have?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say, in a very general sense, uh, as a consultant, I'm a resource.
Hmm.
I'm one of many tools in my client's drawer. They can get my work done elsewhere. But and so I really, it's the value that I feel that I add that makes a difference, and that is because I handle the mechanical design, the electrical design, and software development for all my systems. I've got very little management overhead, very little lost in translation between the engineering teams because it's all happening in my head. I'm sure you've been on engineering teams where maybe there's an issue. The mechanical engineer says, "Oh, electrical engineer put the sensor in the wrong place." The electrical engineer says, "Well, maybe the software can clean up the signal,"
Hmm.
and ultimately, since I'm responsible for all aspects of the design, I've got to find not just the best solution, but maybe the most cost-effective
Hmm.
solution or the most robust solution. And so, having that kind of visibility to everything, I think, is where I add value. I think that to be perfectly frank, the systems that I develop, if you have the time, you can probably get these done overseas at a lower cost. But I do believe that it's going to, schedule is not going to be as competitive, and I believe I offer a superior product, especially since I'm kind of overseeing all aspects of the design.
Yeah, that's as you were talking there, I was reflecting on it and thinking to myself that there's a lot of comparisons, albeit, we make products, custom products for our customers. Um, there's a lot of similarities in the service you provide, albeit in a different way than as to what we do for our customers. And it's all about that. It's about keeping that customer experience, top notch and doing it really, really
Hmm.
fast and getting them what they need because that time adds value for them. I wonder is
Oh,
I,
absolutely.
I wonder is there any one particular project that you can point out where you did that really well?
Yeah, I've got I call it my magnum opus.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a basically a let's see, I would call it a combination of several systems, but ultimately it's a pick and place
Yeah.
system. Um, my client, they have a continuous glucose monitoring
Mm.
technology, and it comes in the form of a wearable that has a sensor, which is essentially a metal core printed circuit board that needs their experimental material. Apologize for being vague. I can't violate any
Absolutely, yeah.
of their confidentiality, but essentially, this is a material that has maybe the consistency of warped wax paper, so it's very difficult to work with. And the system takes this material in sheet form, singulates it into pieces about a 16th of an inch by a quarter of an inch, and then places them precisely onto this metal core
Okay.
PCB, and does some lamination. It does some characterization of the experimental material before it's installed and after it's installed. So we get kind of continuous quality monitoring, and it employs a couple of I don't know if I want to call them innovations, but some approaches that I think are novel or something that I really haven't seen elsewhere. And one of those is, in these big kind of machines, there's often a lot of point-to-point wiring, and there can be some reliability issues there. Documentation can be, you have to be diligent to document all the wiring and
Hmm.
whatnot of these systems, and then a lot of my equipment tends to go overseas. So if this thing is bouncing around in a container on its way, across the ocean, there can be some possible,
Loose wires, that sort of thing.
reliability
Yep.
issues and what. Yeah, exactly. And so troubleshooting that remotely over a Zoom and a bad internet connection is a
Hmm.
pain. And so one of my approaches is that since I've got a little bit of this double E background to supplement my engineering or my ME background, I'll develop a custom circuit board, which is kind of a central interface to all the systems. And instead of having a lot of point-to-point wiring, which takes just like
Hmm.
days or weeks to for a big system like this, you just connectorize all the sensors, all the motors, all the various components. You plug them into the circuit board. Instead of running wires here and there, I'm effectively just drawing lines in my ECAD
Mm.
to make all these circuit connections. And so, anyhow, to answer your question from a broader perspective, this system, I really feel like all that I've learned in my 25 years of experience has gone into this system, and it's my proudest work. I'll be looking forward to. I'm shooting some video right now. It was deployed about 5 years ago, but I finally have they have the intellectual property filed, so I can
You can talk.
display this
Yeah.
work, and hoping to get a video on my website pretty soon.
Awesome. No, that's very interesting. It's again, it goes kind of calls back to that idea that you're solving that customer's problem for them. You're not leaving the opportunity open for something to happen during shipping and then latency for their project to be implemented because you're troubleshooting things and you're solving that problem in a very innovative way, and it's really cool. I be interested to see when that comes out. Uh,
All right. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where originally the client they were assembling these by
yeah,
hand, and this experimental material is very very
yeah.
finicky, and so it was taking them 30 to 40 minutes per to do the assembly. Their yield was very poor, and with this system, the full assembly is done in less than 60 seconds
Wow.
per unit, and the yield is we don't have enough batch data, but we're at least at around 99% yield,
Wow.
and maybe higher. And so what that really helps, because even though my career has been in product
Mhm.
development, since I've been on my own, my bread and butter has been a lot of automation of
Mhm.
test and manufacturing, and that becomes I think highly beneficial to my clients in that it enables them to accelerate the iteration cycles of their
Mm.
design. Whereas these processes would be very manual, they take lots of time, and then you run tests which are also very manual, and it could take weeks or months to run the tests. With the automated equipment that I develop, my clients can click a button at the end of the day, let a whole matrix of tests run overnight, come in the morning, they have all the data, they're able to take that data to inform design decisions, iterate the design and run the tests again. And so, you can see how rapidly you could accelerate product development when you have this automated capability. And since my clients tend to be a lot of startups, schedule is key. They have to get their product to market before anybody else, before they run out of
Hmm.
funding, and so having that ability to move fast is critical. And I think that's what a lot of my equipment enables my clients to do.
Yeah, no, that's it's an excellent point. And again, another topic that we talk about on the show quite a lot is that advantage of speed and being able to iterate through things faster to solve what we term internally as your unknown unknowns. So figure out the things you
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
realize you don't know, and the faster that you can do that, like you said, you're just going to accelerate rapidly in the progress of your design. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, you bring up unknown unknowns, and that's something that is, I think, maybe the
It
key
is.
to successful product
Yeah.
development. I call myself an imaginative pessimist, and I hesitate to use that phrase because I feel like maybe for in this positive mental attitude
Hmm.
mentality, it sounds like a bad thing, but ultimately, identifying potential problems and their solutions as early as possible is critical to product
Hmm.
development. I've heard a rule of thumb that you know, at each stage of the product development process, the discovery of of a problem is 10 times more expensive than in the previous
Hmm.
phase. And so that's a rule of thumb. But obviously, if you discover an issue in the concept, it'll be 10 times if you had not discovered that until design, 10 times more when you're in prototype, 10 times more when you're production. And when it's released and you've got to do an RMA or recall, that's 10 times that
Hmm.
cost. And so, identifying these unknown unknowns, identifying potential pitfalls, and then figuring out ways to rectify them, that's key.
I haven't heard that before, but I think that's probably very accurate based on experience. Um, I did want
Yeah.
to ask you. I know that that example that you gave, the continuous glucose monitor, that's a product that is obviously going to be produced, in a mass, probably millions of units. I would imagine something on
Mhm.
that order of magnitude. I know you also work in the product prototyping end of the spectrum as well. Could you maybe
Mhm.
describe what the differences and challenges are on both ends of that spectrum, or are there differences? Are you applying the same sort of principles at both ends? Like, how do you approach such a wide array of product development challenges?
That's a great question. I'll be honest. I think that I these days most of the work that I do is lower volume systems. There may be low volume systems that do high volume
Mhm.
production, but we're talking like building one or two
Right.
machines that are going to build, thousands or millions of
Yep.
units. And I find that when you're doing high volume product design, it's kind of like an 18-month you know
Hmm.
relationship, exclusive relationship with this
Yeah.
product where you're breathing, sleeping, eating, everything is about that. And I have enjoyed that in the past, and when I've been an employee at a company that's kind of required. But as a consultant, at least for me, that becomes a little bit of a challenge because you really got to dedicate yourself to one client, one
Hmm.
product, and focus on that. And so it's difficult to kind of maintain a good sales pipeline as a
Mm.
solo consultant, because you've basically, as soon as you wrap up one project, you got to be ready to bring on the next
Yep.
one. And that's a pretty it's a significant level of intensity to coordinate all the aspects of design, all the different vendors, transition to pilot production and production, and then this is going to be touching all the different areas of you know getting this product to market. And so yeah, in some ways, I would say that the work that I do now is a little bit easier because if I'm designing one of
Hmm.
something, maybe it's less critical that I fully optimize, say the design of one
Yeah.
thing because I'm just going to make it
Yep.
once. We're not making a million of these. We're not worried about tooling costs as much. We're not worried about materials costs as much. It's at some point there's a calculation of like my time versus
Totally.
iteration, using my time to drive the cost of a part
Absolutely.
down. And so, I try to be cognizant of that with my, with my clients' budgets. But I do say that it takes a certain level of engineering capability to make one of
Hmm.
something, but to make many of something that's manufacturable, reliable, and cost effective, that's a different challenge. It's I think in many ways a more difficult challenge, and so I've enjoyed those in the past, and I still like to kind of dip my toes in that with certain clients from time to time. But I there's something about being able to work on multiple projects, multiple clients at the same time that gives my business some greater stability in terms of my
Yeah,
workload.
that makes a lot of sense. Again, like I think about a lot of topics that we talk frequently about on the show, and you talking about how you've kind of shifted to more low volume manufacturing or volume product design and manufacturing for your clients. I wonder if you could expand on some of the unique challenges that come up with those one-off or a few-off parts or products that you're designing, because I know that that's something we talk about frequently on the show, and how oftentimes the value of your time is worth a lot more than product costs, and the difficulties in supply chain in the current world landscape for supply chain, where you have all of these externalities going on and things become difficult to purchase. What is that like? Like what do you do to solve those challenges?
I think that my approach is multifold or multi-pronged, but one is to develop, instead of a kind of a traditional customer vendor
Mm-hmm.
relationship with my vendors, I like to develop
Mm-hmm.
partnerships. I believe that the how's the phrase go, the tide raises all
Yep.
ships, and so for I don't like to beat up my vendors on price. I don't want to devalue their work. If they give me a reasonable quote, then we're moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. And I find that if my business is succeeding, then my vendors' businesses should
Mm-hmm.
succeed, and vice versa. And so I think that by establishing that relationship, I'm able to rely on their ability to kind of give me their perspective from, a supply chain standpoint. Hey, we should be going with this technology. There's going to be less issues, or whatever. It's a lot better than just buying things on a website and not having a relationship with
Mm-hmm.
certain vendors. And then, in terms of strategies for, I mean, I know that supply chain is a very hot topic right now, especially with the tariffs here on our side of the border, which I appreciate that Protocase is still willing to have a U.S. company represented on this podcast, all that considered. But we just have to employ strategies to make sure that we can keep things moving. Like sometimes that means a risk buys. If I'm in the middle of a design and I've identified a couple of off-the-shelf components that are maybe have either long lead times or limited supply, I may have to just go out on a limb and go ahead and purchase these, even though I haven't nailed down the design, just so I can ensure that by the time I'm ready to do
Mm.
procurement,
They're
those parts will
secured.
be
Yeah.
available. I've definitely been bitten by that one by doing procurement too late. And I've got certain vendors. They've got programs where they have identified items that they will always keep in stock, or have low lead times. I really love the vendors that I work with who publish all the information about their products availability, either what they have in house or at their distributors, and pricing and whatnot. I've actually put together a guide on my blog on how to support hardware products for B2B vendors, and that's one of the strong points, because as we're designing, uh, you know Google enables us to find certain things, but knowing that they're going to be available is yet another
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so having that information accessible to us in the design process is is super
Mm.
useful.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, and that transparency would absolutely, influence your project development plan. Um, I do have one more question for you. You've kind of
Sure.
sprinkled a lot of good advice during this interview, and I appreciate that, especially for those listeners who may be like you, but maybe earlier on in their career. But do you have any specific advice to young engineers who may be looking to get into this space, maybe start their own business, doing what you do? What do you think that they need to know before making that leap?
Um, I think I will say that I'm not an expert here, but I've been in business for 16 years, and I attribute the success of my business to a couple of different things. One is, at the two startups that I worked at previously, I was the number two employee outside of the co-founders. And as you've described about your role at Protocase, when you're early on in a company, you wear multiple hats. So I was in the startups that I work for, I've done IT, I've done engineering management, engineering operations, procurement. I've had my fingers in marketing. And so getting all of those skills outside of engineering, I think those are skills that I employ on a daily basis to run my business. And so I encourage people to kind of have a curiosity outside of, whatever area they're working on from an engineering standpoint, to learn about the various other operations in a company, so that they can learn best practices or learn what works, what doesn't. Um, and then I think it's also important to understand kind of when you're ready to make that leap. After my first startup, so about 5 years into my career, I was completely burnt out. Uh, I was developing a product for a German automobile supplier using a Chinese factory. So I was on conference calls
Yeah.
24/7. And so I took some time off, and I thought I might pick up some consulting work along the way. And it didn't really materialize. And in retrospect, I think the reason why is, one, I was even though I had gotten quite a bit of experience from that 5 years at the startup, it was very specific experience, not like a lot of
Mm,
perspective from other ways of how to do things. And then also, I frankly just hadn't developed a solid network.
mm,
100% of my work is from referrals from my
mm,
network. I've had a website for 16 years. I got my first inquiry for a proper project in December. So maybe that says something about my SEO, but I think it's more about, the fact that your network is really
yeah.
critical. And so the second time going around giving consulting a go, I was working in a very small industry in the overall solar industry, and it was small and intimate enough that when I was available, kind of word got out, and that helped kind of lay the groundwork for initial clients.
Mhm.
And then just staying in touch with my colleagues that I've worked with over the years, that's enabled to bring repeat business in. And so yeah, I see, they say that all of us, how's the joke go? That engineers, you can tell introverts versus extroverts, whether they're staring at their shoes or whoever they're talking to
Yeah.
shoes. I'm totally messing
No,
up
I think
that
that's close.
that
I don't
joke.
know it, but I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's close.
And so being an engineer who can make a conversation
Mm.
and establish friendships, that's been super critical to the ongoing success of my business.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think you're far too modest. I would class you as an expert for sure in speaking on the matter.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
and so thank you so much for coming on. Anybody listening who may say, you know what, I'd like to add Sandeep to my network, and thinking that they can get some help from you, where would they find you?
Yeah, the best place is to go to my
Mhm.
website. That's suryadesign.com, Surya design.com. That's Surya is Sanskrit for the sun,
Oh,
and
cool.
I was intending to do a lot more work in the solar industry. And at the time, every combination of sun, power, green, volts, energy was taken, and so I had to go to a different language. But yeah, you can learn a little bit more about me, take a look at some of my past projects, get an understanding of my services, and have a chance to reach out to me so that we can connect. I'd love to. I'm super passionate about what I do. It's almost problematic. I can't. I really have trouble sleeping at night because I'm constantly thinking about how to design something better or code something differently. And so the passion, I think, is going to kill me. But while I still have it, I would love to talk with people about their projects, and always happy just to hop on the phone call just to learn a little bit more about what you're doing and ways that we might be able to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandheep. It's been it's been awesome listening to your story, and I think you'd be definitely somebody that I would hire if I ever needed your service for sure. I love what you had to say, and yeah, thank you for coming on. It's been great chatting with you.
Oh, thank you. Truly, the pleasure is mine. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story and to share a little bit of the bits of wisdom that I picked up from others along the way. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
No problem at all. So until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, great, thanks.